and welcome back to Aetheral Space 1.7. This time, we're going to be checking out is Dragan kills JF Lincoln.
Not JF Lincoln.
That didn't happen. That's not what's going to happen in this chat. So, what happened last time, Daniel? Do you remember? Do you recall?
I was just going to ask you for the recap. I don't
So they were
remember
hanging
too
out. They were
much.
talking about how horses came to be, and then Skipper opened the door and there was a bunch of guys with guns.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They hired repairmen, and I was like, these repairmen are going to be the bad guys, and then they were the bad guys. Because the Lord Mayor wants, what's his fuck? I forgot his name, the criminal. What's his name?
The hyena.
The hyena. He wants him to get him for him. All right. Let's do this. Dragan threw himself to the ground. Eyes squeezed shut as the sound of gunfire rained down overhead. It continued for maybe a second before, suddenly, a deafening sound like a grenade going off consumed the hangar. When the noise and its ringing after effects had cleared from Dragan's ears, the shooting had stopped. He opened one eye, gingerly, as if not looking at the guns would mean they didn't exist. He fully expected to see his captors strewn across the floor, blown into miscellaneous pieces. He did not. There was a huge hole in the metal wall, like a giant fist punched its way out of the building. Through it, the 10 engineers who'd shown up at the door could be seen lying unconscious in the street. Their weapons lay next to them, sparking uselessly. The cries of a legion of birds, excited by the sudden hubbub, could be heard echoing from the skies. Skipper stood inside the building, right in front of the hole, his hand extended towards it. His fingers were arranged as if they were a gun, and as Dragan gaped at it, a few stray sparks of emerald aether coiled around Skipper's index finger. All right, so we've confirmed that they all can use aether now. This is now a common skill. This is what they teach toddlers after they graduate from kindergarten. They're like, all right, guys, now you learn how to use your aether.
These are like guys who know what they're doing. Of course they have it.
Dragan put his mind to the task. What had Skipper done? How had he done it? If it was an application of his aether, what was the method? What were his capabilities? That's a good question. Because of reading, and I'm curious about this, we've seen a little bit of aether fighting, but we don't know exactly all the things it's capable of. We don't know if it's like Green Lantern level potential or if it's just like sparks and bursts of energy. Was this his most powerful aether application or a normal attack? His perceptions didn't have much to go on. Strong. A second of warning, please, grumbled Bruno. That should be grumble.
He grumbled.
Yeah.
It's like fucking Alice in Wonderland.
This series also serves as editing for Tan. Let this be a lesson, kids. Always read your work out loud before posting it.
Bruno grumbled and trembled through the woods.
Trembled. He was still standing up, his palm extended in the direction where the gunfire had been coming from. A barely visible barrier, tinged violet by aether, hovered in the air in front of him. When he closed his palm, the barrier vanished. Oh, he casted shield. Force field generation, strong enough to stand against sustained gunfire. Ruth Blaine was crouched low to the ground on all fours, clad in that strange skeletal armor. Stray lines of red aether revolved around her as she sighed. I didn't get to do anything. The all fours and the skeletal armor. I mentioned this before when she first fought, but it again reminds me of like the beast style from Yakuza. Serena frowned. Me neither. Well, I love myself a dull fight, ladies, said Skipper, stretching as he strolled back into the hangar. Less room for unpleasant surprises. He glanced down at Dragan, still prone on the floor. You okay down there, kiddo? Don't call me kiddo, glared Dragan. It's Dragan Adrian. Yeah, I'm aware. You gonna sleep down there, or are you planning on getting up anytime soon? Grumbling, Dragan rose to his feet and dusted off his knees. Looks like that hyena guy hates you as much as I do. Skipper's face twisted into an expression of mock hurt. What? You hate me? You kidnapped me. That was hours ago. Dragan felt the blood rush to his face. He didn't much like being joked around with. It was a mistake to think the Skipper moron was capable of taking anything seriously. Still, though, said Skipper, rubbing his chin as he turned back to his accomplices, this is a problem. No idea why, but it looks like the hyena wants us dead. That's problematic. Personally, I want us alive. How about you guys? Serena nodded enthusiastically. Alive, please, Mr. Skipper. Nice, Skipper nodded. Now, step one in my plan of not being dead in 20 minutes' time is to take out the inevitable second group of attackers that will be showing up any time now. Ladies, if you'd please get ready. Serena and Blaine nodded, aether already clumping around them. Skipper simply continued his stretches, getting himself limber. My folly was not bringing water to this endeavor. Dragan furrowed his brow. Now hold on a second, Skipper cocked his head. As far as I'm aware, kiddo, you're not a lady. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I was under the impression you were just a pretty boy. I'm not a pretty boy. Nah, don't be too hard on yourself. It's what's inside that counts after all. Dragan bit his tongue, turning away
Dragan get
across
fucking
his
roasted
arms.
every fucking chapter.
How do you even know there are more people coming anyway? I see no sign of that. Skipper frowned, blinked. Oh, that's weird. Isn't it obvious? There was a resounding crash from somewhere nearby, and then another, closer, like a giant bunny was hopping down the street. Skipper's frown was instantaneously replaced with a grin. Find a corner to hide in and get comfy, kiddo. So before we continue, my theory was that this will be Dragon's chance to like fight alongside them, and this will be the first time he's like a teammate. So let's see if that happens. We still have 7 pages left. When you were in Guimo's line of work for long enough, your moral compass inevitably got adjusted to match. Was Guimo the hyena?
He's the hyena's like big guy.
Okay. Oh yeah, he was like the bouncer when they went to the alley. He'd burnt people alive in their homes when they couldn't pay protection money. He'd cut up humans while they were alive and left the pieces to torment their family members. He'd crushed the throats of more than one individual too young to spell the word. So assassinating some supremacy cadet didn't really register as a big deal. Guimo landed, feet crunching through the concrete below him and leaving a sizable crater. Mingled blue and red aether danced around his bulging muscle, his glowing skeleton visible through his skin. So this is interesting because so far every color of aether we've seen has been unique. This is the first time we see not one but 2 repeats, which makes sense because there are only so many colors without like bullshitting a bunch of shades of them. So that's kind of neat. So that begs the question, because the aether color seems partially related to the identity of the character, but I assume that also means each color has its own like abilities.
Maybe.
But, yeah, just maybe you're the fucking author. An aether tick that made stealth impractical, but intimidation easy. Nobody liked to say no to a red flaring skull. Fair enough. His men followed behind him in a truck, the vehicle hovering around a half-meter over the road. It wasn't the best method of transportation, unlike the high-end vehicles you got in places like Abrasia. Is that how you say it? Abrasia?
Brasa.
Abrasa. It was capable of achieving only limited altitude. Their weaponry was much more impressive. Most gangs on Kalis Brett made do with shitty little punch-point weapons, the kind that shot lead over large distances. But when it came to firearms, the hyena spared no expense. Plasma pistols, rifles, even a grenade launcher or two. Enough to kill any ordinary human 50 times over. And when they had to kill the unordinary, they had Guimo. He didn't have a second name. They hadn't bothered giving him one at the orphanage, and he hadn't found a need for one since. He was the only Guimo on Kalis Brett that mattered anyway. Guimo leaped again, his kickoff from the ground sending him soaring high up into the sky. He wasn't especially concerned with attacks from the ground. There wasn't much that could break through his barrier, and anything that could only made him stronger. The hangar he'd been told was the target was below him now, a small building growing increasingly larger as he plummeted towards it. This was his favorite part of the job, the moment before impact. It was a kind of glorious abandon, like he was a bullet being fired from a gun. There's a cool line like that in Black Lagoon. He braced himself, curling into a cannonball, and struck concrete. Again, Dragon threw himself to the ground as he heard the sounds of smashing rock. This time, the roof had exploded inwards, an indistinct shape smashing through it and striking the ground below, barely missing the ship. Why couldn't this just be simple? A simple ransom payment would have been so much less trouble and so much less traumatizing. Skipper's crew didn't hesitate for a moment. Using her skeletal armor to enhance her speed, Blaine leapt towards the indistinct shape, dust still billowing around it with a predatory snarl. Serena didn't move, but instead grabbed a nearby steel chair by the leg, lifting it. And as Dragon watched, the violet aether flowing around the girl's hands expanded to encompass the chair as well. I don't remember, is the aether the same color whether it's Serena or Bruno?
It's slightly different. It's purple for Bruno, violet for
Okay,
Serena.
that's what I thought, because I remember Bruno's being purple, but I didn't know if violet was just you saying purple in another way. With a chaotic symphony of screeching, bending metal, the chair was reforged into the shape of a crude broadsword in the space of a few seconds. Serena gave it a few practice swings and, apparently satisfied with the balance of it, charged into the fray. Dragon blinked. How the hell did that work? He thought he'd had a basic understanding of how this aether stuff worked, but that obviously wasn't the case. Before he could ponder the question further, Dragon was forced to cover his ears with his hands as a series of deafening bangs rang out one after the other. Turning, he saw Skipper, fingers mimicking a pistol as he pointed towards the source of the destruction. Excuse me. Each time a bang rang out, the area around Skipper's hand rippled, a blast of concussive force being deployed.
Bang,
With the
bang.
last
He's got a
blast,
spirit gun.
yeah, I assume he's finger gunning it.
Yeah.
With the last blast, the dust clouding the area cleared, and Dragon could see the source of the commotion himself. It was the huge pugnant they met at the hyena's place, red and blue aether cooling around him as he fought off Blaine and Serena. Oh, boss fight. Blaine was moving more
Dark
quickly
Souls, Hellspark comes in.
This is Ornstein and Smoke.
Weebo the singular.
Blaine was... Excuse me, my throat's super dry. Blaine was moving more quickly than Dragon had seen before, hopping from debris to debris, even as blows from the attackers sent them flying through the air. Her strikes were fast and precise, claws stabbing under the pugnant's arms, at his eyes, at his jugular. Serena was the opposite. Her sword strikes were slow, but the force behind them was enormous, gusts of air pressure broiling around her as she swung her makeshift blade. She was laughing innocently, too, like a child, as she brought the sword down again and again. Dragon got the distinct feeling that he'd be sent flying if he even got close to her. These kinds of attacks would have killed an ordinary person near instantly. The pugnacious Guimo didn't even flinch. He simply stood there, letting his red and blue aether absorb every blow. Occasionally he would swing a fist out to try and strike one of his attackers, but he didn't seem especially concerned about the prospect of being hit. Monsters, Dragon gaped, suddenly feeling very fragile indeed. They're all absolute monsters. That's what I imagined. Could he use this as an opportunity to try and escape? No, absolutely not. Skipper was standing near him to prevent that, for one thing. Plus, there was no guarantee that another squad of attackers wasn't waiting outside to grab him as soon as he made it. He was screwed if he did, screwed if he didn't. Damn it, damn it, damn it! There was a sudden blur of movement within the smoke, Guimo moving faster than Dragon's eyes could register, and in the next second, a head-sized chunk of rubble was zooming straight towards his face. He widened his eyes. He took in breath, but he didn't dodge. He didn't have time to. There wasn't even time for the signals to pass through his nervous system. So much for being a cogitant nerd. I'm dead. Sorry, give me a moment. The first time you see a certain something, you find it incredible, awe-inspiring. You simply don't understand how people can just live their lives day by day and not be reduced to tears every time they see this thing. It is incomprehensible to you. Over time, though, you adapt to the thing's presence. You develop a sad resistance to wonder, like the thing you once loved so much is no longer good enough for you. Before long, you don't even know why you loved that thing in the first place. For Dragon Hadrian, that thing had been the sky. Oh, this is a flashback.
Yeah.
Crestpool was no gas giant, but it might as well have been. Is this where he gets humanized a little bit? A rotten little marble of a planet coated in toxic clouds several times its size. If humans had any sense, they would have written this place off as a lost cause and kept on flying. Unfortunately, the gases it vomited were valuable, and men were greedy. The breather cities... Oh, is that like the ones that you can breathe in?
Well, no, that's what they're called.
Okay, the breather cities were colossal, floating in Crestpool's atmosphere like giant cigars. If you looked above you, you'd see sickly yellow clouds. If you looked below, you'd see much the same. All the light was artificial. The idea of a sun was a bad joke. Quite often, when he wasn't needed as a lie detector for Mr. Fix, Dragon would stand on one of Breather 19's rare balconies and stare upwards, trying to see something but the piss yellow atmosphere. By the way, you wrote Steve.
Yeah.
I assumed it was stare. He wore a gas mask, of course. Breathing outside would kill him before long otherwise, but the gas still stung his skin like scratching nails. He'd read about them in books, seen them in videographs, these things called stars, lights that made themselves. Looking for himself, though, he never saw a thing. For all he knew, these things called stars were pure fiction. For all he knew, Crestpool was all there was.
Oh.
But still, stars burned all by themselves, perpetual, never needing anyone or depending on anything. Wait, never needing anyone or depending on anyone. Is that how it's supposed to be, or is it anything?
Anyone.
Okay.
Both.
I would personally change that to never needing or depending on anyone. There wasn't a thing in the world that could hurt them. Hey, it's author's choice. There wasn't a thing in the world that could hurt them. Dragon Hadrian thought that he would quite like to be a star. Sorry, I kind of ruined that moment a little bit with the weird grammar thing. Dragon grunted as he drifted back to consciousness. The pounding pain on the side of his head felt like he'd been struck with a gold club.
Oh,
but he was still
no,
alive.
that's the golf club. This is a bad episode for my typos.
This is why you should always read... See, here's the thing. Everyone knows you should read your work out loud and edit it. But even experienced authors, everyone forgets to or skips it. But it's always important.
Me and Donnell talked about this previously. I was going to take all these errors out, but he thought
what
the viewers
would have happened
needed to see.
Without your dear friend Darnell, you would have uploaded this to Royal Road, and you would have been a royal fool.
A royal fraud.
He was still alive, so that projectile couldn't have hit him. The sounds of fighting were still loud and clear, steel striking skin and gunshots ringing out in the chorus. He wasn't safe. God, when was the last time he'd felt safe? How did the projectile not hit him? Did it miss, or I wonder if someone protected him?
We'll see.
He needed to move. Judging from the cold against his cheek, he was lying down on the hangar floor. If everyone was preoccupied with this battle, then maybe it was possible for him to crawl away while nobody was looking. But first, a precaution. Pushing through his delirium, the dizziness brought about by his injury, Dragon tapped into his aether. It jumped into life, quietly circling his body like an electric serpent. Good. Dragon wasn't sure how much good it would do, but he needed some kind of physical defense or he'd be killed by the first attack that happened to hit him. He knew the direction he needed to head in to reach the exit, and so, slowly and carefully, he began to push himself across the floor. He wasn't especially big on dignity. He couldn't risk shifting into a more comfortable position, so he was essentially dragging his face across the cold metal floor as he moved. Excuse me. right, let's see if I can make the whole thing without popcorning. I don't know if I can.
Dragon does not give a shit about his dignity.
Jagan could hear his heart beating like a jackhammer as he made his slow escape. All he'd wanted was a quiet life. Uh-oh.
My name is Dragon Hadrian.
How old is Dragon? I just thought of that when I was thinking of the copy pasta.
19 around.
Oh, he's young.
Young boy.
It was such a simple wish, and now he'd somehow ended up in the middle of a tug-of-war between some asshole dissidents and a crime syndicate. But that wasn't quite right, was it? The dissidents clearly wanted to capture him, but that Guimo guy had thrown a rock at his skull with the intent of smashing it into pieces. That had been a kill shot. Why the hell did they want him dead? He'd never done anything that bad, and when he had, he certainly hadn't let anyone find out about it. An explosion shook the hangar, and Dragon stopped his movement for a moment, concerned that he'd be noticed. After a moment or two, however, the sounds of fighting resumed, and he was free to resume fleeing. It was a humiliating feeling, though. These people, all of them, had caused him so much trouble, and now he was expected to just run for his life like a little coward. Not even run, crawl. He clenched his teeth, blood rushing to his head. No. Hell no. I told you! I called it! I called it! And now they're gonna be like, you're alright, kid. Fucking 10? Did I call it? I called it. Skipper danced around the flurry of blows as they came towards him, taking care to tighten up his coat so he wouldn't fall off. The big guy, called Guimo, was tougher than he thought. His strength was one thing, but his speed was the real wonder. That's true. They have 3 people fighting him, or 4, I guess, if you count Serena and Bruno as separate. And one of them is also a pugnant, and he's still giving him hell. In Skipper's experience, if you can move faster than the other guy, you'd pretty much won already, unless your opponent was a cheater. Skipper took great pride in being a cheater. He stepped to the side as Guimo thrusted a palm towards him. As the air pressure from the blow swept his hair, Skipper pointed a finger towards Guimo's face and let loose a volley of heartbeat shotguns. It was a technique Skipper was quite proud of, absorbing sound onto his body, concentrating it, and then releasing it again as a concussive blast. Usually 1 or 2 was enough to knock pretty much anyone on their ass, but this guy was pretty sturdy. I take it this is an Aether ability?
Yeah, that's his thing. He's the kind of asshole who names his attacks.
Anime power? Okay, cool. Was that a specific application of his Aether, maybe? If so, there had to be a trick to it, some source from which he was drawing his strength. Is that talking about the concussive blast or Guimo?
Guimo.
Okay. Still, the blasts made the man move well enough. Guimo went rearing backwards from the force, and as he did, Serena appeared from out of one of the clouds of dust. She was laughing, carefree, as she held a concrete sword in each hand. Skipper couldn't help but smirk as she unleashed a series of blows upon Guimo's back, the swords crumbling in her hands as she did so. So her Aether ability lets her, like, transform objects?
Yeah, into swords specifically.
Oh, based? With Serena Del Ced's Aether, a weapon was never out of reach. Hers was busy dealing with the mundane soldiers. So I have a question, by the way. Sorry to interrupt again. Aether, so we know Aether can do specific things. Is this a case of, like, each person has, like, one thing they can do with Aether, or is it more like you could theoretically do anything, but you master 1 or 2 techniques?
It's second one there.
Okay. That was fine. With her speed and strength, she was well suited to crowd control. Skipper let loose another heartbeat shotgun, this one aimed at Guimo's feet, and frowned as the giant didn't budge. Is Blaine, or not Blaine, Ruth, yeah. Sorry, same person. Is she also giant? Is that like all pugnant, or is this guy just like more pugnant?
This guy is more pugnancy.
Okay, that wasn't right. Judging from the effect his prior attacks had, that should have easily knocked him down. Ah, smiled Skipper, adjusting his position as a wild kick nearly took his head off. That made sense. Guimo's strength was in his Aether barrier, and that barrier derived additional power from the damage that he did take. Thus, the more damage you did to him now, the less damage you could do to him afterwards. Hey, opportunity cost. What a wonderful power. Wonderful, but annoying.
Like, Subarashi!
I had to say that! Skipper, I could totally see this as an anime. Skipper adored brute force, but it seemed like it wasn't going to work here. Skipper launched twin heartbeat shotguns downwards towards the soles of his feet.
Through the soles of his feet, sorry.
Through the soles of his feet, launching himself up into the air. Guimo's gaze followed him up, clearly intending to let loose another projectile. Wait, are there holes in Skipper's feet?
Well, no, the shoes. It's like, so he sends him out through his body, so...
Oh, so he's kicking it from his feet.
Yeah, to, like, propel himself upwards.
Okay, I'm dumb. Guimo's gaze followed him up. I thought he was like fucking Team Fortress 2 rocket jumping. Roaring in anger, the pugnant swung his fist at the girl, only for one of Bruno's air shields to hold the blow for a second. The barrier rippled in the air for a second, then shattered, sending Bruno flying backwards. Taking in a deep breath, Skipper prepared himself for what he'd need to do next. It wasn't going to be big on dignity. If Guimo's barrier was blocking all outside attacks, Skipper simply needed to launch an inside attack. Taking advantage of Serena and Bruno's distraction, Skipper landed on the oversized shoulder of the pugnant, a wide grin on his face. At a tap from Skipper's foot, Guimo's head snapped to the side, his pupils dilating as he realized just how close the man was. His other fist pulled back, ready for a blow that would smash Skipper to pieces. Guimo, have you heard these words? Skipper smiled, leaned forward, and stuck his arm down Guimo's throat. Guimo blinked. Heartbeat shotgun. He was fairly sure that one heartbeat shotgun would do the trick, but he wasn't taking the risk of Guimo surviving it. 6 simultaneous blasts of concussive force entered the pugnant's body with sounds like explosions, and the giant stumbled back, hands clutching at his throat, eyes bulging. As Skipper watched, twin trails of blood oozed out from behind Guimo's eyes, joined a second later by a veritable waterfall from his mouth. He opened his mouth as if to say something, once, twice, and then fell over, a red puddle quickly spreading out from his face. Dead as a doorknob. Well, grunted Skipper, stretching. That was boom! The first shot hit him in the back, piercing through his weakened aether and striking at his skin. Instantly, he fell forwards, his joints involuntarily locking as the current spread throughout his body. A yelp of pain escaped from his lips. Stun shot. Non-lethal. Oh, fuck! Forcing his body to move, Skipper turned to look behind him, teeth clenched from the exertion. Fucking, oh my god, I guess... I was wrong. I thought he was going to join the fray.
He did.
Dragon, yeah, but not to help them. Dragon Hadrian stood there, panting for breath, pointing a pistol at him. Bright blue aether swam around both him and the weapon, concentrated mostly around the barrel. Skipper had thought so, but that confirmed it. The shot had been strengthened with aether. Otherwise, there was no way it would have made it through his barrier, even if it was weakened. Hadrian smiled. Aether's a shitty projectile on its own, but it's a different story when you add it to something else, right? Skipper groaned. Fair enough, fair enough. They'd kidnapped the kid after all. He couldn't exactly fault him for shooting his shot given the chance. Still, Hadrian was clearly a good person. Are we sure about that? The pistol he was holding wasn't a stun gun. He'd adjusted it to be non-lethal before firing. Aw. Serena hadn't reappeared yet. Maybe that blow from Guimo had knocked her out. Ruth, too, was missing. Were the randos outside more trouble than he'd expected? As Hadrian stood there, guns still trained on him, a group of armored soldiers strode through the smoke and took position, aiming their rifles at him as well. Him as in Dragon, or him as in also at Skipper?
At Skipper.
Okay.
Red
lenses stared out from behind bone-white masks. Ah, the cold hand of the law had made its appearance. Hadrian glanced at them, eyes wide with relief as he recognized their uniforms. I'm Dragon Hadrian, he said. From the ship, I managed to escape. Something was wrong. The way the officers were stood, the positions they were taking, they'd surrounded Skipper, but there wasn't the relaxation inherent with an accomplished mission. They still had a job to do. Oh, fuck. They're gonna hurt him. Good work, said one officer, the golden sash across his shoulder making him a commander. Men. At the last word, the soldiers moved, changing their target. Instead of aiming at Skipper, they'd aimed at Hadrian, fingers curling around triggers. Skipper didn't have to check to know they weren't set to stun. Hadrian's face twisted in innocent confusion. It was an expression Skipper had seen on far too many corpses over the years. No! He roared, and his voice tore the room to shreds. Who said no, Skipper?
Yeah.
Oh, damn. That was a good one. Fun read. I'm excited to see what happens next. It didn't go exactly how I expected. It makes I'm actually happy because it makes more sense. It makes more sense for Dragon to take the opportunity to fight back and leave. But I just assumed because it's kind of a trope for the hero who joins the bad guys to like have a moment that's what was going to happen. But who knows? For now, we're going to break here, and as always,
I really like the way you shot me in the back. Welcome aboard.
Very anime. It reminded me of when fucking Jonathan kicked Speedwagon. He's like, he could have shattered me with that leg, but he didn't. He's a true gentleman through and through.
Rube's like gonna beat him up. He's like, I shall allow no harm to come to this gentleman.
God, I hope that's a line. But yeah, as always, check out the series on Royal Road. The chapters should go up the same day these are uploaded, so it's just whatever your preference is. If you prefer to read on your own, or if you prefer the voices with my stupidity chiming in. Hope you guys enjoyed. Also, subscribe to the channel if you liked us. Leave a comment. Tell us what you thought. Anything else, Tan?
That's it.
All right. Bye.
Bye.